Brot of Sigurðarkviðu. Fragment of a Lay of Sigurd. The gap of 8 leaves in the Codex Regius, see introductory note to the Sigurðarkviðu, is followed by a passage of 20 stanzas, which is evidently the end of a longer poem, the greater part of it having been contained in the lost section of the manuscript. There is here little question if such a compilation is made up the so-called Regnsmál, Fafnismál, and Sigurðarkviðu. The extant fragment shows every sign of being part of a poem which, as is understood in the manuscript, was a complete and definite unit. The end is clearly marked. The following poem, Sigurðarkviðu 1, carries a specific heading in the manuscript, so that there is no uncertainty as to where the fragment closes. It seems altogether likely that the 20 stanzas thus remaining are the end of a poem entitled Sigurðarkviðu, or Lay of Sigurd, and more specifically, the Long Lay of Sigurd. The extant and complete Sigurd Lay, a relatively late work, is referred to by the annotator as the Short Lay of Sigurd, which of course presupposes the existence of a longer poem with the same title. As the Short Lay is one of the longest poems in the whole collection, 70 stanzas, it follows that the other one must have been considerably more extensive in order to have been distinguished by its length. It may be guessed, then, that not less than 80 or 100 stanzas, and possibly more, of the Long Lay of Sigurd have been lost with the missing pages of the Regius. The narrative, from the point at which this so-called Sigurðarkviðu breaks off to that at which the Brot takes it up, is given with considerable detail in the Volsunga saga. In this prose narrative, 4 stanzas are quoted, and one of them is specifically introduced with the phrase, as is told in the Lay of Sigurd. It is possible, but more unlikely, that the entire passage paraphrases this poem alone. Such an assumption would give the Lay of Sigurd not less than 250 stanzas, allowing about 15 stanzas to each of the missing pages. And moreover, there are inconsistencies in the Volsunga saga narrative, suggesting that different and more or less conflicting poems were used as sources. The chances are that the Long Lay of Sigurd filled approximately the latter half of the lost section of the manuscript, the first half including poems of which the only trace is to be found in the Volsunga saga prose paraphrase and in 2 of the stanzas therein quoted. The course of the Volsunga saga story from the Sigurðarkviðu to the Brot is briefly as follows. After leaving the Valkyries, Sigurd comes to the dwelling of Heimir, Brynhild's brother-in-law, where he meets Brynhild and they swear oaths of fidelity anew. The Volsunga saga is no more lucid with regard to the Brynhild-Sigdrifa confusion than was the annotator of the poems. Then the scene shifts to the home of the Gjokings. Guthrun, Gjuki's daughter, has a terrifying dream and visits Brynhild to have it explained, which the latter does by foretelling pretty much everything that is going to happen. This episode was presumably the subject of a separate poem in the lost section of the manuscript. Guthrun returns home and Sigurd soon arrives to be made enthusiastically welcome. Brynhild, mother of Gunnar and Guthrun, gives him a magic draught which makes him forget all about Brynhild, and shortly thereafter he marries Guthrun. Then follows the episode of the winning of Brynhild for Gunnar, see Grippispa 97 and note. This was certainly the subject of a poem, possibly the first part of the Long Lay of Sigurd, although it seems more likely that the episode was dealt with in a separate poem. The Volsunga saga quotes 2 stanzas describing Sigurd's triumphant passing through the flames after Gunnar has failed and 2 have changed forms. They run thus. The fire raged, the earth was rocked, the flames leaped high to heaven itself. Few were the hardy heroes would dare to ride or leap the raging flames. Sigurd urged Grani, then with his sword the fire slackened before the hero. The flames sank low for the greedy of fame. The armor flashed that Regin had fashioned. After Sigurd had spent 3 nights with Brynhild, laying his sword between them, see Gropispa 41 and note, he and Gunnar return home, while Brynhild goes to the dwelling of her brother-in-law, Heimir, and makes ready for her marriage with Gunnar, directing Heimir to care for her daughter by Sigurd. Auslog. The wedding takes place, to be followed soon after by the quarrel between Guthrun and Brynhild, in which the former betrays the fact that it was Sigurd, not Gunnar, who rode through the flames. Brynhild speaks with contempt of Guthrun and her whole family, and the following stanza, which presumably belongs to the same Sigurd lay as the Brot, is quoted at this point. Sigurd the dragon slew, and that will men recall, while the world remains. But little boldness thy brother had, to ride or leap the raging flames. Gunnar and Sigurd alike try to appease the angry Brynhild, but in vain. After Sigurd has talked with her, his leaving her hall is described in the following stanza, introduced by the specific phrase, as is said in the lay of Sigurd. Forth went Sigurd, the speech he sought not, the friend of heroes his head bowed down. Such was his grief that asunder burst, his mail-coat all of iron wrought. Brynhild then tells Gunnar that she had given herself wholly to Sigurd before she had become Gunnar's wife. The confusion between the two stories is commented on in the note to Gropispa 47, and Gunnar discusses plans of vengeance with his brother Hogni. It is at this point that the action of the Brot begins. Beginning with this poem and thence to the end of the cycle, the German features of the narrative predominate. See introductory note to Gropispa. Brot of Sigurðarkviðu. Hogni spake, what evil deed has Sigurd done, that hero's life thou fain wouldst have? Gunnar spake, Sigurd oaths to me hath sworn, us hath sworn and all hath broken. He betrayed me there, where truest all, his oaths methinks he ought to have kept. Hogni spake, thy heart hath Brynhild whetted to hate, evil to work and harm to win. She grudges the honour that Guthrun has, and that joy of herself thou still dost have. They cooked a wolf, they cut up a snake, they gave to Guthrun the greedy one's flesh, before the men to murder minded laid their hands on the hero bold. Slain was Sigurd, south of the Rhine, from a limb of a raven called Full Load. Your blood shall redden Atli's blade, and your oaths shall bind you both in chains. Without stood Guthrun, Gjuki's daughter. Hear now the speech that first she make. Where is Guthrun, the noble king, that my kinsmen riding before him come? Only this did Hogni answer. Sigurd we with our swords have slain. The grey horse mourns by his master dead. Then Brynhild spake, the daughter of Boothly. What shall ye joy in weapons and lands? Sigurd alone of all had been lord. If a little longer his life had been, right were it not that so he should rule, or Gjuki's wealth, or the race of the Goths. 5 are the sons for ruling the folk, and greedy of fight that he hath fathered. Then Brynhild laughed, and the building echoed, only once with all her heart. Long shall ye joy in lands and men, now ye have slain the hero noble. Then Guthrun spake, the daughter of Gjuki. Much thou speakest in evil speech, accursed by Gunnar, Sigurd's killer. Vengeance shall come for his cruel heart. Early evening came, and ale was drunk, and among them long and loud they talked. They slumbered all when their beds they sought, but Gunnar alone was long awake. His feet were tossing, he talked to himself, and the slayer of hosts began to heed what the twain from the tree had told him then. The raven and eagle as home they rode. Brynhild awoke, the daughter of Buthli, the warrior's daughter, ere dawn of day. Love me or hate me, the harm is done, and my grief cries out, or else I die. Silent were all who heard her speak, and naught of the heart of the queen they knew, who wept such tears the thing to tell, that laughing once of the men she had won. Brynhild spake, Gunnar, I dreamed a dream full grim. In the hall were corpses, cold was my bed. And ruler thou didst joyless ride, with fetters bound in the foeman's throng. Utterly now your Niflung race, all shall die, your oaths ye have broken. Thou hast, Gunnar, the deed forgot, when blood in your footprints both ye mingled. All to him hast repaid with ill, who fain had made thee the foremost of kings. Well did he prove, when proud he rode, to win me then thy wife to be. How true the host slayer ever had held the oaths he had made with the monarch young. The wound staff then, all wound with gold, the hero let between us lie. With fire the edge was forged full keen, and with drops of venom the blade was damp. Here it is told in this poem about the death of Sigurd, and the story goes here that they slew him out of the doors. But some say that they slew him in the house on his bed while he was sleeping. But German men say that they killed him out of doors in the forest, and so it is told in the old Guthrun lay, that Sigurd and Gjuki's sons had ridden to the council place, and that he was slain there. But in this they are all agreed, that they deceived him in his trust of them, and fell upon him when he was lying down and unprepared.